The more time we spend online, the more we scatter pieces of ourselves across the internet. Photographs, personal tastes, even our syntax amalgamate together to create our digital simulacrum. Considering our already massive digital footprints, it's no surprise that we're concerned with our security and privacy during our waking hours. But what happens when you die in this world and your digital self goes on existing? All those embarrassing vacation photos. It's a concept that isn't given much headspace, but maybe it should. Death is coming for us all. Welcome to Death 2.0, a digital guide to prepping for your digital death. I'm offering you a broad explanation of the cultural phenomenon to explain how cultural understandings of death are edited through the internet, and how it has been both expanded and complicated through human-computer interaction. We'll cover the aspects posthumous management of content, think social media activities, online interactions, creative and other work that we produce online, which could be forever vulnerable to inaccessibility. Also, the strange new world of cyberspace as used for mourning and memorialization. Your computer is likely crammed with pictures and documents. The World Wide Web holds your banking information, social media profiles, and subscription services, among professional websites and others. These digital artifacts are part of a growing collection of personal data that can recreate the stories of our lives. And they gotta go somewhere. Sure, they can very well just stay there. Your Spotify playlist means little to you now, I imagine. But for those who'd rest easier knowing that their digital assets have been dealt with, Netflix and not charging you post-mortem, you'll want to listen up. In response to the growing cultural awareness of digital afterlives, corporations and internet startups have established new forms of online digital legacy services in which two categories emerge: asset maintenance and posthumous scheduling. Let's break those down. Asset maintenance is set up to help people prep and manage their digital assets, or our digital remains, what's electronically left behind. This isn't unlike addressing material possessions in a formal will. This is the job of a digital executor, who is responsible for managing your digital assets, whether it be distributing your digital relics to close friends in the way that you want, or paying debts on behalf of your digital estate. It's a fairly new concept, so many wills and testament templates will not include naming a digital executor as a necessary decision. Have you thought about how difficult it would be for your friends and family to access your data after you died? Considering how often I have to reset my password because I forgot. Extremely. As privacy policies dictate, the companies who have your information will certainly not give it up for anything without your password. The whole point is so that no one can access it. iPhone refuses to unlock its devices even if the owner is deceased. A dead person can't say what they want done with their digital remains, or how to access them, especially since most deaths are unanticipated. This can result in culturally dissonant experiences for the bereaved. Black Mirror, a science fiction anthology series, examines modern society in regards to the unanticipated consequences of new technologies. The episode Smithereens features a plot line with a woman who fails to log into her deceased daughter's social media to potentially understand her motivations for taking her own life. She exhausts the limited password attempts every day, recording the combinations in a notebook. She is unable to get access. Unless you make specific plans for your digital afterlife, your digital remains stand a good chance of being mismanaged, or disappearing entirely. Naming a digital executor just made it to the top of your list of things to do before you die. Consider making a master password list and giving it to someone you trust. Make a drive of the files too, so no one has to sort through your personal information, both for your own privacy and out of the respect of friends and family who can be left feeling overwhelmed by sorting through your digital assets. Digital photos will become more difficult to preserve as formats change and become obsolete. Nothing lasts forever, so you might want to print those photos too. In an article with iParody, Jawed Kaleem is cited from his post, Death on Facebook Now Common as Dead Profiles Create Virtual Cemetery, saying that by the end of the year, 3 billion Facebook users' pages will have become memorial sites for their owners. Facebook allows you to designate a friend to act as your legacy contact, who will moderate your page. They're able to put any final messages about memorial services and update your information. There's also a self-destruct option if your family is willing to submit proof to the company of your death by way of a scanned death certificate. Yet Facebook doesn't seem overly concerned with paving the way for the rights of digital death, since the news of death are informed by social media anyways, whether it's hearing about your cousin or a dead celebrity. As explained, not all websites are equipped to deal with your digital death. Dying has become fashionable, and investors are pouring money into startups, bolstering new ways to think about death and dying. The term posthumous legacy curator was coined in 2015 after Facebook users were unknowingly starting online conversations with the dead. An example of such curator is digital and archive planning website Everplans, who lists they can do things like close your online accounts, paid for subscriptions, and also delete your files from your computer or hard drive. Digital legacy services like Willow testify to the perceived value of our online interactions and our digital presence, and represent an attempt to exert some control over what happens to us after we die. Derek Rant of Willow, whose company offers against deadline price check to help those who, quote, couldn't afford to die, end quote, says, quote, the industry hasn't changed for over 100 years. People thought you had to pay a lot to do it right. Now it's becoming more transparent, more open, and partly as a result, says Grant, funerals have become less funereal. The ladder of digital legacy services speaks to this on a whole other level. Posthumous scheduling offers the opportunity to tweet from beyond the grave. LiveZon allows people to tweet after they're dead, and AI will analyze your Twitter feed to learn your likes, opinions, and syntax, and fellow users can help it to become better by supplying feedback when they are alive. Dead Social supplies further ghost tweeting with the aid of Facebook posting to create secret messages to be released post-mortem. Creator of Dead Social, James Norris, suggests this evokes memories and discussion around us and amplifies the voice we had when we were alive. And he's not alone. Digital death advisor Peter Billingham, who also founded the website Death Goes Digital, says, the world of death and funerals have been really disrupted by digital culture. What was stable for hundreds of years has changed enormously in the last 5 years. We're more open about death than ever before, and tech is helping reframe what death means. The cultural phenomenon is obviously backed by people who detail its affordances. Websites like Facebook not only serve as archives of social spaces for the bereaved that have been largely unanticipated, but also offers the opportunity of paying respects in a very public way, where they're not only mourning the deceased, but forging bonds with others who are grieving. Wright highlights churches' deductions on the affordances of both the internet and Facebook in digital mourning culture, as it can allow people the unique experience of appearing to commune with the deceased person publicly, and because they are doing so publicly, they are also strengthening the communal experience. Monuments offers headstones with a QR code that, once scanned, users are taken to a memorial page which features information for the deceased and their loved ones. This includes the obituary, family heritage and history, photos, and comments left by family and friends. Funerals are for the living. They allow us to say goodbye and offer community and hope for the living. In short, they're support systems, and private grieving has expanded into a community-based one that takes place online. Digital representations of death won't be confined to cemeteries. Instead, as Elaine Casket says, they are increasingly in the places of the living. They will haunt different spaces, the transdimensional, and will be what Casket calls the active dead. Billingham has a term too, the present, not absent. The natural trajectory of digital death culture extends into alternatives for cremation, ways of memorializing and immortalizing the dead by way of their simulacrum. After we pack away our physical forms, we can live forever on the cloud. These are new forms that have been argued as support systems for the bereaved. South Korean broadcaster Munhwa Broadcasting Corporation made it possible for mother Ji Sung-jang, who lost her 7-year-old daughter, to meet her again. In this video, she wears virtual reality goggles and stands in front of a green screen. Soon after, the viewer is able to see what she sees, her daughter, Na-yeon, in virtual reality. She reaches to touch her daughter, but sees her hands move through the virtual child.
어딨어? 어딨어?
엄마! 엄마! 엄마 어디 있었어?
엄마? 항상
엄마 내 생각했어?
Atik suggests that online avatars are good, and that grieving is more than a passive activity of feeling the emotion of grief, but that it is also an active process of involving finding new ways of relating to the one who died. He also suggests that the active driving process, which involves maintaining relationships with the dead in some form, lead to healing and a new understanding of life for the bereaved, affording them a further outlet for relating to the deceased, and thus expanding the process of their active grieving. Mohammed Aurangzeb Ahmed, a computer scientist and specialist in personality emulation, engaged in a project to create simulations of deceased to keep loved ones alive, starting with avatars and moving into using augmented reality and potentially life-size simulations. He was inspired to work in the area when his father died and sees it as a 2030-2050 reality. He writes, "It means my daughter will have the chance to interact with my father, and it will deepen our relationships with our loved ones and offer a living memorial that can bring emotional enrichment." Ahmed acknowledges the critics that bring up that we need closure, but he claims it only goes towards solving the "I wish I said this" or that problem to an extent. Further, it's not without legal or ethical issues. What if the simulation was sanitized with difficult opinions edited out? Does the voice sound right? Is it even them? While it is possible to console someone whose loved one has passed suddenly, I'm not so convinced. It's more likely that virtual reality can cause more negative emotional reaction. In another Black Mirror episode, Be Right Back, the unexpected death of her husband lends her to hear about a new service that lets people stay in touch with the deceased. It's an artificial intelligence imitating her husband that downloads and learns his digital footprint, all his socials, emails, and text messages. This escalates into a human-looking form, but the issues, as anticipated, arise. She becomes frustrated and upset with the android as it does things his real self shouldn't have. She wants to remove it, but it begs for its life. I admit, as the mourning process is different for everyone, I cannot deny the merit of digital executors or alternatives to cremation. It's out of respect that some people won't even unfriend the dead. But emerging online memorial practices have an overwhelming dark side. Technological singularity is a hypothetical point in time where tech growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unforeseeable changes to human civilization. Digital resurrection involves a suspension of belief where a continued relationship can exist. The ability to keep the memory of a person intact, albeit virtual, does pose questions about death in the modern age and what the appropriate amount of time is needed to adjust to loss. By imagining them alive, some might argue that Facebooking the dead or virtual reality could be a new aspect of the denial stages of grief. Would it be natural to grieve online, or would you get stuck in a continuous loop of the past? Importantly, it means the grieving process may never come to a natural end. Limits on mourning exist in some cultures and cannot be controlled. Online environments and public grieving may cause distant experiences for those whose religious beliefs require an end to public expressions of grief. Sherlock suggests that contemporary disenchantment with traditional religious and spiritual practices has left many people with inadequate or unacceptable ways of understanding death and mourning. RIP trolling, when anonymous internet commenters post nasty remarks on Facebook profiles, can shock and disturb genuine mourners and cause significant emotional damage for anyone. Likewise, leaving digital executors to memorials or assets can also be harmful for those who feel burdened to uphold a particular impression of the deceased person by replying or commenting on offending posts, resulting in them finding it difficult to manage. Further, death tech has the potential to complicate the experiences of the death of others. Currently, there is no cohesive assessment in literature of how online memorialization changes how we experience people's death. Simi and Cherise recognize that modern computing technologies are not yet designed to effectively acknowledge the inevitable death of their user. Wright concludes that the emerging work in HCI seeks to address how to better design systems aligned with the concept of thanatosensitivity, that is, a sensitivity to the issues surrounding death and dying. He writes, future HCI design needs to focus on systems that support and respect the bereaved, shed light on how technology is being used at the end of life, and how information about deceased persons is presented or used. What digital death culture has proved unanimously is that cultural experience of death has changed in various ways. Death has become edited and complicated by HCI. Beyond traditional funereal practices. The expansion of mourning practices represents new forms of ritualized behavior concerning death that extend beyond traditionally locally based funereal practices. Mourning rituals are changing and expanding not only in terms of how we grieve, but in scope, due to the global scale of online practices that is afforded by social networks and the architecture of the internet. Guarding your personal information while you're alive is important. The internet is forever, so it's worth making plans for what will happen to your digital life after you're gone. Whether it's making sure that your digital files are safe for all of eternity, or that they die with you.